When did your teacher go too far to prove a point? My classmate Asher insisted that blood was blue until it hit oxygen, while Mr. Nguyen kept explaining deoxygenated blood only looked blue through your skin. It's basic science, Asher. Blood is never blue. It's either bright red or dark red depending on oxygen levels. Asher shook his head stubbornly. He'd seen diagrams in textbooks showing blue veins and red arteries and refused to believe it was just for illustration. Half the class sided with Asher because they'd grown up thinking the same thing. The other half was just entertained by how frustrated Mr. Nguyen was getting. On Thursday, Mr. Nguyen walked into class with a determined look on his face. He set his coffee mug down harder than usual and announced he was done arguing about easily provable facts. Asher smirked thinking he'd won, but then Mr. Nguyen went into the supply closet and came back carrying medical equipment. He had a vacuum chamber, sterile needles, and tubes like you'd see at a blood donation center. The whole class went silent as he set everything up on the demonstration table. Jane raised her hand to ask what he was doing, but he waved her off saying we'd understand in a minute. Then he pulled out a medical blood bag from a cooler we hadn't noticed before. The bag was full of dark red blood with a label that had been partially scratched off. A few students gasped, and Jessica actually got up to move to the back of the room. Nobody had expected him to bring actual human blood to class. This is deoxygenated blood, Mr. Nguyen announced. As you can see, it's dark red, not blue, never blue. He connected the bag to the vacuum chamber to demonstrate how blood looked without any air exposure. Even in the vacuum, it stayed dark red. Asher crossed his arms and muttered something about it not being fresh enough. That seemed to push Mr. Nguyen over the edge because his face turned red and he slammed his hand on the table. You want fresh blood? Fine, I'll show you fresh blood. He grabbed a syringe and started rolling up his sleeve. The whole class erupted with students telling him to stop. Michelle ran out of the room saying she was getting the principal, but Mr. Nguyen was already tying rubber tubing around his upper arm like he was about to draw his own blood. Ryan stood up and physically grabbed Mr. Nguyen's arm to stop him. That seemed to snap our teacher back to reality because he looked around at our terrified faces and slowly put the syringe down. He mumbled an apology and said we should take a 5-minute break while he cleaned up the demonstration materials. But while he was packing things away, Megan noticed something disturbing. The blood bag had a partial label visible under where it had been scratched. She could make out part of a date from 2 days ago and what looked like the beginning of a name. Her face went pale as she whispered to the people around her, "This is fresh human blood. Where did he get fresh human blood?" The question spread through the classroom like wildfire. Everyone was staring at the bag trying to see the label better. Mr. Nguyen noticed our stares and quickly shoved the bag back in the cooler, but it was too late. We'd all seen enough to know this wasn't some old teaching supply. Jane asked directly where the blood came from. Mr. Nguyen said it was from a medical supplier, but his voice cracked when he said it. Tom pointed out that medical suppliers don't give scratched off bags to teachers. The room was getting tense as everyone realized something was seriously wrong. "I have connections at the hospital," Mr. Nguyen finally said. "They gave me expired blood that would have been destroyed anyway, but expired blood wouldn't have yesterday's date on it. And hospitals don't just hand out blood bags to teachers, even if they're expired." The more he tried to explain, the more suspicious everyone became. Mike pulled out his phone to call his mom, who was a nurse, to ask if that was even legal. Principal Johnson arrived with Michelle just as the situation was spiraling. She took one look at the blood bag on the table and told everyone to leave the classroom immediately. As we filed out, I heard her asking Mr. Nguyen where he got human blood and why he thought bringing it to school was appropriate. We spent the rest of the period in the library while administrators dealt with Mr. Nguyen. Rumors flew about where he might have gotten the blood. After school, I overheard 2 teachers talking in hushed voices. They mentioned that Mr. Nguyen had been going through a rough divorce and acting erratically for weeks. His ex-wife had recently started dating someone new, and he'd been taking it badly. One teacher mentioned he'd been spending time at the hospital visiting someone. The next day, we had a substitute teacher. Principal Johnson came in to tell us Mr. Nguyen was taking a leave of absence. She assured us the blood had been properly sourced and disposed of, but wouldn't give details. We weren't allowed to discuss the incident, and anyone who'd taken photos was required to delete them. But Megan had done research overnight. She showed me a news article on her phone about a man who'd been attacked 2 nights ago and had to receive emergency blood transfusions. The victim's name was partially visible in the article photo. It matched the scratched-off label from the blood bag. Full story on channel linked below.